Welcome to this week's piece. So if you've been on my channel a while, you may have seen this in the background of one or two of my other videos. I can't even tell you which ones, but this was a piece that my stepson had been working on in my shop because he just wanted to try out flipping furniture. And this was as far as he got because he is a teenager. And anyways, so I needed to get this out of my shop because it was taking up space. I don't like that. You all know that I have a very, very limited amount and I have to make use of all of it. And since this isn't a piece I would typically pick up, mostly because it's small, I would have wanted two of these if I was going to pick it up. It's just kind of one of those awkward sizes. It's a large nightstand or a small dresser, kind of in between those two. And it was a little outdated. So a good first timer's piece because it was free when he had picked it up and it gave him something to do and to work on, but we're gonna make some changes. So to kind of update this, I'm going to cut off the bottom because it just dates it just a bit too much for my liking. So to do that, I'm just going to be using my circular saw. I usually put a straight edge or board or anything that has a straight edge to it and line it up. You measure out from where your blade will be going into, and then you can run it along the board or straight edge and get yourself a really nice smooth cut with this. Since I already have this on its side, I just went ahead and did scuff sanding on this. I already knew that it was prepped right because I had him prepping it. Now the edges need a little bit of fance. They were just a little too straight, and I kind of had an idea just to add all kinds of things to this because why not? It's something, like I said, that I wouldn't pick up and I just wanted to play with it. So that's what I'm doing here. And somebody sent me this trim router. It didn't have a name on it, but seriously, you guys are so incredible. I cannot believe somebody sent me this. I am just so blown away by all the things you guys give me. I can't even believe it. So just thank you so much, whoever you are. I hope you're watching this and you see that I love it. So then I took the top back to bare wood. And then I'm using this gel stain first because I was going in with the black stain and I didn't want the black to be super, super dark penetrating. I wanted it to be a softer dark. So I ended up doing multiple coats of the black, but over the top of the soft orangey brown color, it really kind of calms it down. And then the bottom, I just added, this is kind of just like a dust barrier. It doesn't need to be on here, but I just thought it would look better when you lifted up the bottom of the piece because I'm going to raise it up on legs. I wanted there to be that solid bottom there instead of like an open drawer. So that's the only reason I'm adding this piece. Just I want it to be a cleaner look. So I obviously traced it out, and then I'm going to use my circular saw again to cut it out. Now the initial cut this way I just did to take the board down to size to get it a little bit smaller and easier for me to make the cut. And then I'm adding tape here to prevent so much tear out of the wood. Now I'm still going to get a little bit, but it's going to be a lot better than what you see here. And then I'll have one smooth surface to go on, and that will be obviously on the bottom where it looks the cleanest. I'm going to go in with some wood glue and then my airstrike, and that's how I'm attaching it, and this thing will not go anywhere. For a quick base coat, I'm just going to start with Platinum Seas. This is an incredibly light gray. So each drawer kind of had its own little frame out, but I didn't want to use those because I felt like it would just be too much. I want this to feel like one cohesive thing, so I'm going to add my own framing. And I always keep a bag of these extra appliques on hand from when I'm pouring other ones. So some of these are left over from my ethereal forest dresser, some are left over from a couple other pieces, and then I still didn't have enough for exactly what I wanted to do, so I put these on here, and then as I was building it up kind of in a way that seemed pleasing to me, I just cast some more and worked with what I had. I know I've talked about this fast cast before. I go back and forth between the fast cast and using paper clay. These are two of my favorites. I use them both for different things. This one, the only reason I'm using fast cast is because I already had these extra appliques on hand and I knew I wouldn't have to do a bunch more. And also I wanted to do some more of the intricate ones, and a lot of the really intricate ones are hard to do with clay. So that's why I went with this route. Now the downside to these is your paint likes to reactivate over the top of them because they're very slick plastic. So a lot of times I will prime over these and the primer sets in and really grips the paint, and I don't have any issues with that. Well, this time I decided not to prime, and the only reason I didn't prime is because I knew that this paint was going to be on here for a while, because while I'm doing this, I'm also preparing to head down to California, and I knew that the paint would have time to almost cure in that time, so I wasn't too worried about it reactivating and coming off. So I wanted to try a new technique out on the top. As you can see, it's much darker now because of the extra coats of the ebony stain. And then I also did one coat of sealer, and then I gave it just a very light scuff sand. And now I'm taking this stencil here with just the slightest amount of my metallic paint, and I'm stippling it on. Now the seam I wasn't the biggest fan of in this, so I just went back through and kind of touched it up freehand so that you couldn't see any definitive lines between the break and the stencils. And then I went over this with a semi-gloss clear, and that is what I'm sealing the entire top with. And then I also decided to spray this over the appliques as well, just so that just in case the paint wouldn't reactivate when I was adding all of the other colors and swirling and blending that I'm going to be doing for the rest of this. So this was just a precautionary measure, but I'm glad I did it. And so for the front, I didn't really have a grand idea of what I was going to do. I knew that I was going to do clouds, mountains, waters, trees, which is just kind of, it makes me happy to do that. So that's where I went with it. I wanted it to be a little more whimsical, like some happier colors, kind of a little bit girly, and like the cherry blossoms and things like that. I just wanted it to be very flowery and something that, you know, would go good in a little girl's room. Since this is kind of the size of a small dresser, I thought it could be used for that. So that's the route that I was taking. Now for my blends, most of you know who have been following along, I love to start with a base coat of my original color, and then it makes all of the other colors blend in super easily. And then I just, when I have a painting in it and I'm trying to blend the painting in with it, I will add just a tiny bit of those colors around the edges. So at the top corner there, I will add a little bit of the blue. Around the midsection, I will do a little bit of the peach, and at the bottom, I can do a little bit of green. And then swirl it all in, and it all just looks so cohesive together because just that tiny bit of paint will go in there and blend out and really, I don't know, I just love the way that it looks when it like kind of circles around it. And so I use a multitude of brushes. I'd like to say I have a favorite, but I really don't. I will use all of them. I just, depending on how I'm feeling for the day, I just add in colors, and I usually use a larger, stiffer round brush to blend everything in. And I just keep going till I like the way everything looks. I add water if I need to. I add more paint if I need to. I really don't have a set way. It's kind of, I do what I feel at the time. Since my top is already sealed, I don't have to worry about getting paint up on the edge there because it will just wipe back off with a little bit of water and a rag. And so that's a lot of times why I will finish my top first. That way I know I can go back and clean up any excess paint I get anywhere. So to really amp this up a bit, I'm taking my metallic paint. I'm doing it in the lightest touch possible. And I don't do long, smooth strokes because I feel like you can see all the brush strokes when you do that. I'm kind of going every which way, circles up and down, back and forth. And I'm just brushing it everywhere to give it a little bit of texture, but then also you can see the metallic everywhere when the light hits it, and it just looks super, super cool. I do wish that on the bottom, more colored part of the image, I would have thinned it out a little bit more because it flattened it out just a little bit too much, but in certain lights, you can really see all the details of it, and in other lights, it reflects the metallic just a little too much. So that's something I would change next time, but overall, I'm pretty pleased with how it came out. Obviously, I've got to amp up these appliques, so I'm using my Rub and Buff. This one's in gold, and I'm just going to go over and hit all the high points on this. I'm choosing gold because I'm going to be adding gold legs, and I'm making the hardware gold. I opted to keep the original hardware, like I said, just because this was a piece in my shop that I didn't want to spend any money on it. I just wanted to kind of get it out. And so while if this was something that I would pick up and really spend more time on, I would have changed out the hardware. But again, because I was just seeing what I could do with this, playing around with it because it was kind of like a bonus piece, I didn't mind just keeping the original hardware, even though it's a little blah. I did go through with the spray sealer and seal the entire thing like this. I don't know why I did this. I mean, it's fine. I'm glad I did. I usually brush on my satin poly, but since the top had such a high shine, I was like, let's carry this through the whole piece. So it has the metallic and then also a bit of semi-gloss over it. And I don't know, I didn't hate it. I'm kind of like, maybe I should get more semi-gloss in my life. Now, huge shout out to LeeAnn. Thank you so much for these legs. I brought them with me because I knew I wanted them to go on this piece. At the time, I wasn't sure that I was going to paint them. I thought I would just leave them black, but after I finished the piece, I decided that they needed to be gold. So, there we are. And after attaching them and the hardware, we are good to go. Oh hi, Karen here with Elegant Upgrades, and we've got our finished piece. So this turned out much better than I had anticipated. I wasn't sure where I was going with it. You guys know it was just an extra piece in my shop that my stepson was doing, and then of course, as teenagers do, just moved along and started doing other things with this time, which is totally fine. But then I'm like, I need this ugly thing out of my shop. It's not something that I would actually pick up for myself. I only ever want 2 of things that are this size. This is just 1, so I felt like I had to make it really stand out if I was just going to do it as a standalone piece. So I think I've accomplished that. It's definitely its own thing. I will say the legs are set back, just I would have preferred them to be flush, but just based on the structure of the little dresser, they had to be set back a little, which is fine. It looks okay, but in my mind, I would have preferred it to come forward, but it would have messed up the drawers, so couldn't do that. But aside from that, I love everything else about it. It's very whimsical. I think that's a good word for it. Clearly, I'm back in California. I told you guys that I was coming down to work on some other stuff, and I know that my cohorts are following along. If you're not a part of the cohorts group, that's totally fine. You don't have to, but I just do extra kind of businessy stuff. So all of the updates about selling things down here and all that is in the cohorts group, which is just the YouTube subscription thing. But yeah, so I'll be down here. Know that I'll have delayed responses to questions and comments, but I will absolutely get to everybody like I always do. So if you have any questions about anything, I always answer, always. But when I'm here, it just takes me a little bit longer because I have to go to a place with reception. to do that. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you guys are having a marvelous summer. I know I am. It's been really fun to kind of get to do and travel so much this summer. And I'll see you guys next week.